It's like a fossil from a fossil fuel era. This is a 12-volt battery, and you might be surprised to know that all electric cars still rely on these. And I'll tell you why, and I'll tell you what happened when mine went wrong. In fact, it's gone wrong a few times. Yesterday my wife wanted to drive the car and it wouldn't start because the 12-volt had discharged. Unfortunately, I don't have video of that. You're probably sad to know. Luckily, I've got one of these little portable power bank things. Now you can jump start a 12-volt battery with this, and I've used it a few times, so this has been invaluable. One of the best things I've ever bought. You've got to wonder, in a car like this, an electric car, that's an enormous battery underneath, very, very high power battery, why on earth do 12-volt batteries still fail? I mean, why can't it top up the charge all the time? Let's go back in time to when it happened before, and I had OVMS plugged in, and I used this to get it started again. So I woke up today with loads of notifications from OVMS. OVMS is the little box I have plugged into the car to tell me the state of charge, and it was saying 12-volt battery going less and less and less and less charged, and then, you know, battery critical, and then normally you would get like a notification that would say battery recharged or battery restored, but it didn't. So I came out to the car this morning, and yes, of course, the 12-volt battery has discharged completely and the car won't start. Put the foot down, press the power button, and nada, niente, nothing. So there's the OVMS that was plugged in. So what we have is one of these. So I'm going to try and start with this. So this is it. It's actually only half charged by the looks of it. It's because it hasn't been used actually. So I should have topped it up, in fact. So that goes in there, and then those little lights blink. So then, okay, so plug that bit back into there. That's flashing there, so that's good. We do negative and positive. And can you hear it's doing these clicks? Okay, so we'll try and start. Hey, and that's worked.
And Kim Hughes got it too, if you know the...
So the moment you turn on the car, it will recharge the 12-volt itself. So let's take off the little jump starter. So please, that worked. Now I'll plug OVMS back in and just see what the battery reading is. So we're now up to 13.2 volts on the 12-volt battery, and it had dipped as low as, was it 4.8 volts, which is mad, really. So nice with the sun out. I had a tan, better hair. So this time, what had happened? Absolutely nothing. So OVMS wasn't plugged in. What had happened is that on this very, very cold day, I had to move the car in the morning, and I just drove it around for a couple of minutes and then came back to the drive. Those couple of minutes, that wasn't enough for the car to charge up the 12-volt battery. With an electric car, the moment you turn the car on, it should recharge or start recharging the 12-volt battery. It actually takes a while, so it's not instant. So that should be what happened. Because I had just driven around for a couple of minutes, it didn't have a chance to really do that. So batteries failing in winter is nothing new. Anyone that has any kind of car, electric or not electric, will probably be used to 12 volts failing when it gets really, really low. In fact, it loses about 20% capacity. The 12-volt battery loses about 20% capacity when it gets to sort of freezing temperatures, and it was -3 or whatever. So why do EVs have 12-volt batteries in the first place, you might be wondering? Why can't it just use the big one that's underneath, the big, very expensive, heavy one that's sat underneath every electric car? So there's actually a few reasons for this, and I hadn't fully appreciated this because I've made a video about the 12-volt failing before, and I think I've probably moaned about it, you know, saying, oh, why does it exist? You know, why do we have 12-volt batteries in electric cars? Blah, blah, blah. And actually, there's some pretty good reasons for it. Firstly, there's the kind of obvious cost reason. all of the things like windscreen wipers and the alarm system and all this kind of stuff, it's all supposed to work on a 12 volt system. The big battery under the floor is 400 volts. In fact, it's 800 volts in some new EVs. So that's it's just easier to work on a 12 volt system. All these components and everything, windscreen wipers, all the rest of it, it all works on 12 volt. Much cheaper using those, and much easier if it's already supposed to work with 12 volts. So safety is another aspect. You've got 400 volts of power underneath you, and you could perhaps argue that, well, that's not going to be very safe if, let's say, there's something wrong with your windscreen wiper stick or something like that. If something's wrong with that and you touch it and there's 400 volts going to it, then you're not going to be a happy bunny. So there's the safety aspect. I'm sure engineers can think through this problem and step down the power and do whatever else, but I suppose it's just an added consideration. And going back to point number one, why would you bother? Interestingly, the original Tesla Roadster didn't have a 12 volt battery. It just used a portion of the lithium ion one, which I didn't know. When they did a second revision of the Roadster, they put in a 12 volt battery. Clearly a 12 volt battery just makes sense, because you know the engineers at Tesla are pretty good. They know their stuff. And in fact, the Model Y was supposed to come without a 12 volt battery, and subsequently it's got one. And then finally, for emergencies, imagine that the high power battery fails for some reason. If you didn't have the 12 volt battery and your high powered battery failed, then you really would be in trouble. You wouldn't be able to put your hazard lights on or anything. So it's a fail safe in that respect as well. So what's the problem then? Well, when the 12 volt battery, when the voltage gets low, the e-Niro should top it up, and it should do this automatically, and it's called Auxiliary Battery Saver Plus, and that should be enabled by default on your car. That's what's supposed to happen, and that will activate, and it will activate for about 20 minutes, topping up the charge, and then it will stop, and then it will do that whenever it needs to, whenever it notices that the voltage is low. So you might notice at night or whatever, you walk past the car and it's got a green flashing light. That could mean one of two things. I think if you're accessing the OVO app, I think that will flash. I can't test that because I don't have one. I don't have the OVO app. Or it means it's doing this battery saver thing. So if you see a light flashing, a green light flashing, then that means it's topping up the 12 volt battery. And that's happened fairly regularly actually. Every time I walk past the car at about 4:30 in the afternoon, then it's been doing that. Certainly on about 3 occasions recently. So that shows that there probably is an issue with the 12 volt battery anyway, and it's not holding enough charge. Admittedly, it's been fairly cold recently, and that doesn't help. As I said before, that will deplete. Certainly if it gets below freezing, that will deplete the 12 volt. It doesn't hold charge very well anymore. So what I decided to do was test the battery, and I bought myself a battery tester. So yesterday I tested the battery, and this is what the results were. Excuse the ridiculous hat. My wife says I look like I'm a condom wearing this. Okay, well, I'm going to test the battery. And this is the first time I've used one of these. This is a Topdon BT200. And it's as simple as putting the red on the red and the black on the black. So even I can manage that, I think. Okay, so first off we take these off. Okay, and then this turns on. It doesn't have any power until you plug it into the battery. Battery test. Enter. Regular flooded. Yes. CCA 410. Yep. Yep. Testing. Replace. Well, that's pretty conclusive, isn't it? So clearly that's not great. The 12 volt is pretty dead. Can't start the car, so I'm going to use this to try and jump start it. Right, well, that's started the car. So now I'm going to see what the battery is doing, see if it's actually charging it. Because right now it's in ready mode, so that means it should be charging the 12 volt. Enter. Let's just see if it's charging. Charging test. Enter. So it is definitely charging. Increase speed to 2,500 revs per minute. Is that what R over M means? Revs per minute? I guess. Keep it for 5 seconds. Just enter to continue. Well, we can't actually rev in an electric car. Well, it says charging normal, so that's good at least. Now, I'm not sure this is going to be a good test, but let's just try the battery test again. I mean, it has been charging for a few minutes. Probably not enough. Regular flooded, yes. Standard CCA, 410, yep. Enter. Right, healthy, 10%. Charge 100%, that says. But it can't have charged up to 100% already. I don't think it's that fast. So, I'm not sure what that means, in fact, but if it's healthy 10%, that's not good, is it? So all I'm going to do now is just disconnect the battery tester and just leave it in utility mode for a while. And hopefully it'll be nicely charged up, ready for tomorrow. And really, in theory, battery saver, auxiliary battery saver, should kick in. And it has done the past few nights when I've walked past. So, but if it's doing that daily, then that does show that there is something wrong with the battery, and of course that proves that there is something wrong. Last time it was tested though, the battery was fine, and it was tested a few months ago, but perhaps it's just discharged so many times now that it's starting to fail. But really, lead acid batteries like this, you would expect them to have like a 4-year lifespan or something like that, and this is coming up for 2 years, so it shouldn't fail so soon. But I have had it discharge a few times now. So anyway, I'm going to leave it, and then I'll maybe test the battery again tomorrow and see how it is. Okay, this little box of tricks again. Testing. Healthy 66%, charge 60%. So that says good recharge. Now interesting, last night that was saying that it needed replacing. So I was literally going to show you how to use utility mode, but the 12 volt has died again. To turn on utility mode, it's gone again. Key not detected. Key not detected. Why is it going so quickly? Because I did the battery test and that said that was fine. I only did that like 25 minutes ago and I haven't had anything turned on or anything. Just weird, isn't it? Positive, negative, click, click, click. Now let's see what this is doing then. Replace. So in the space of 25 minutes it's gone from, what was that, 60 before? To nothing and replace. Okay, so let's see if it's charging. Charging test. Yes. Can't see that very well. Forget that because we don't have that to worry about. So it's charging, but it's just not keeping the charge. So it would seem that the battery is not holding charge very well, so it could mean it's faulty. I've had it fail on a few occasions. The last time was when I was stranded on the side of the road because my main battery had run out. It was dangerously low anyway. I was on turtle mode, tortoise mode, whatever you want to call it. And at that point it's not going to try and save the 12 volt battery, so any electronics I was using, it probably was coming straight out of the 12 volt and not out of the high power battery. So when the recovery people were trying to get it onto the tow truck, they told me that the 12 volt had failed, and it kind of makes sense in that case. Now the more times that these 12 volt batteries get discharged completely, it lowers the lifespan. So it could just be because this has happened so many times, that's what's happened here. When I took it in for a service, and that was only a few months ago, they said that the battery was fine though. And when the mechanics looked at it, they said the battery was fine. But this is not specific just to Kia. Lots of electric cars have this problem. I've heard of Leafs having it, although it didn't happen to me the 18 months I had a Leaf. I never had this problem. And that's even with the app, because I had the app with the Leaf. And that didn't happen at all. So Leafs have it. I think the i3, some people say the i3 has problems with this. I think the MG ZSEV, that has problems as well. So it's not unique to Kia. As you may know, I'm one of the admins on the e-Niro UK interest group on Facebook. And my friend Carol, one of the other admins, she did a poll and it showed that most people haven't had this issue. A few people have, but most haven't. So am I making a mountain out of a molehill? Possibly. It has been known before. I have done this before, but it's worth going through all this just in case you've got an e-Niro and you want to make sure that your 12 volt doesn't fail, because it is particularly annoying if you don't have a battery charger. It's also worth saying that the UK is relatively temperate. Our temperatures are fine really most of the time. We don't get that many freezing spells. Certainly not where I am. A bit more up north, but it's not too bad really. Now Andre Lawrence is, you may know of him. He's got an e-Niro, or a Niro EV, I think it might be called, in Canada. Andre's had his 12 volt battery die on him about 15 times, but then in Canada it gets really cold. I mean, when I was in Montreal once, it dipped down to -20, so I know just how cold it gets over there. So that's understandable. So although I've seen more people commenting on, oh, my battery's failing and things, it is partly due to the cold, of course. So what can you do to make sure this doesn't happen to you? Firstly, make sure your auxiliary battery saver plus mode is on. As I said, it should be on by default, and there should be no reason to turn it off. I don't even know why it's an option, but it is. Don't sit in the car and just play with it unless it's on ready mode. It's ready mode if you put your foot down on the brake and press start. In other words, if you're ready to start the car. So if it's in that mode, if it's in ready mode, or if you go to utility mode as well. If you're in either of those, then that's fine, and then it's using the high power battery. It's not using a 12 volt battery. Otherwise it is using the 12 volt, and whatever you do in there, it's just depleting the 12 volt battery. And in fact, you will get a sign on the screen. On the screen it will tell you that your battery is being discharged. So if you see that, that's a good clue really, that you should stick it in utility mode if you're sat there for a while. If you haven't used the car for a while and then you go to it and then you need to do a short journey or something like that, then do your journey, and then when you get back, do leave it for like 30 minutes or something like that, on or in utility mode. Get yourself a portable battery charger, so one like this. There are loads of them on Amazon, or if you don't want to use Amazon, I wouldn't blame you. Then there's loads you can find. They're all over the place, and it doesn't even have to be a particularly good one or high-powered one, as far as I'm aware, for EV batteries. So I did read that somewhere. You don't have to worry about getting a really expensive one. This one was about £40, I think, and I would say that it's really worth it. And also, you can charge anything off it. So like anything that's got a USB plug. So it's just a really good thing to have for emergencies. And as I say, I've used this a few times now. Some people say that you could replace this battery with a lithium-ion one instead, but I have heard they're more expensive. Apparently they're better. I mean, you get more charge in them and everything, but they're more expensive. But I have heard that they're not as good in extremes of temperature, and they're probably better than this one, but not as good as a deep cycle battery like the Teslas have. So I don't know, do a bit of research. I just quickly looked online about that, and that's what people say. So lithium-ion batteries might seem like it's a good idea, but it might not be. You could get a trickle charger, so that's something that you plug into the 12 volt and you leave it plugged in all the time, and then that will just make sure that it's not going to discharge. Now, one big thing is that if you have a dash cam plugged in, or something like OVMS, like I have, that isn't plugged in at the moment, but that I do have it. Now that draws power from the 12 volt battery, and if you have either of those, the e-Niro is terrible, I think, at knowing that something is drawing more power than it should be, perhaps, and actually charging up when it should do. So that's just worth bearing in mind. If you do have a dash cam or something else plugged into the OBD2 port, you might find the 12 volt battery gets depleted far more if you have one of those plugged in. Okay, but none of this should happen in the first place. You've got a giant battery underneath. It should be charging the 12 volt. It should be taking care of that 12 volt battery all the time. I just don't believe there's any excuse for the 12 volt battery in an electric car to die, apart from maybe extreme circumstances, like if you do deplete the main battery completely, and then you're stuck on the side of the road and you've got your hazards on and the lights on and the heater going, then of course that's going to deplete the 12 volt, and it doesn't have the main battery to use as a backup. So that's that would be understandable, but in most cases I just don't think it should happen. I think it should always be topping it up whenever it can, especially when there's something like a dash cam plugged in. It needs to know, well, if it's drawing more power, then do the battery saver more often. I think the e-Niro needs a better battery. Teslas have a deep cycle battery. That allows it to charge and discharge. Well, it's kind of the clues in the name, really. Deep cycle. That's cycling. When you discharge it and charge it back up, that's a cycle. And the Tesla batteries, it seems, handle that better because they are better batteries. This is a standard starter battery, it's much cheaper, and they could probably do with putting in a better battery. I think that's kind of obvious, really. When I was kind of doing a bit of research for this video, I was thinking, well, I haven't heard of any Tesla owners having problems like this. And apparently some Model 3 owners did have problems with 12 volt early on, but Tesla fixed it with a software update. So that just shows you just how good it is to be able to have over-the-air updates in your car. That's all this is, I think. It's just a software update. It's just something Kia just need to tweak, really. So it's just worth bearing in mind that when you do get an EV, you do have to still worry about a 12 volt battery. Unless perhaps you have a Tesla, and then it seems like that's less of an issue because the battery is better. But this is a subject that needs much more research. I need to kind of find out all the different makes that do have these problems and what kind of batteries they have and things like that, because there are lots of different types of batteries. This one is certainly not very good, but deep cycle batteries, it sounds like they might be better. Although I look forward to hearing your comments, because you might say that actually it's good for Tesla and might not be good for this. So I hope you found this interesting. Please do press the subscribe button and press that alert button so you're told when I do more videos, and I look forward to speaking to you later. Bye for now.